7. He's got great speed. Turning the corner. Christian Watson down the sideline. And he will score. Whoa. Hang on. Love to Watson. To a one-score game.
This one is the stunner. You basically feel like, all right, this Eagles team sort of has this thing under control, and then Christian Watson hits the Jets again. 6 touchdowns now in the last 3 games. He is really something. When he gets in the open field and running, that was some throw by Jordan Love, too.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. If you'd like to email the show, you can send a message to PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. If you'd like to text the show, you can send a text message to 865-658-5824. And I've got a special guest on with us this evening. We're obviously recording this live on YouTube and Twitter. Going live here. Is it Saturday night, Dusty? Is that right?
That feels right. I think that sounds right. Yeah, I think you're good.
So you guys will be getting this pod dropping Sunday afternoon, and obviously it's something you can go back to and listen to later as well. No real expiration date on this type of talk. We got Dusty on here to make us all a little bit smarter, to educate us on this Packers offense and exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Dusty obviously writes for Cheesehead TV, Packer Report, Pack a Day Podcast. I don't know when the guy sleeps. Dusty, how you been, man?
I've been good, man. Been tired. Had a bit of a day today, but yeah, dude, I've been good. It's past couple of weeks, I feel like I've been busy. A lot of people wanting to talk about Packers offense with Rodgers, finally traded and some of the stuff set in. So, man, for an off season, it's been a lot of time over the past couple of weeks talking football, which I always appreciate. So yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you carving out the time, and I think you hit the nail on the head, man. It's like as soon as that trade went through, everybody went, all right,
Yep.
Let's move on to the next era here, right? And everybody starts digging. And Jayden Reed's been fascinating to me. I hope we get a chance to talk about him before we wrap up. But really, the thing I wanted to highlight today, guys, for those of you listening on the pod, we're going to do the best we possibly can to explain what we're showing on screen. But Dusty has got a new project that he's doing here with Cheesehead TV that I'm really, really excited about. This is right down my alley because it's so hard to not necessarily find the information, but to gather the information, organize the information, and everything that goes into a play call sheet and down and distance in certain situations. And this is, I think, your 3rd or 4th installment of this. Is that right, Dusty?
I think this was, if you don't count the first one, because I did one where I introed it to kind of lay out like kind of what I want to do with it. I think this was part 5. There's part 5 if you count the first one. So yeah, this is, I think, 4th installment of actual the call sheet portion of it. Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, I almost, what we're going to focus on tonight, guys, is 2nd and short, and I almost went to 1st and 10, and I seen all those plays, and I got so happy. I'm like, man, I'll have him on here till 2 a.m. if we
so
try
many
to hit
plays
on
there.
So we're going to key in on 2nd and short. And I really want our listeners to get familiar with you and the work you're doing. Because like I was telling him offline, we've got a lot of listeners here that you probably never even popped onto Twitter. You may not go to cool websites like Cheesehead TV and others. You might just listen to pods. You're going to gain a lot of information from this, and hopefully it'll steer some more traffic in your direction, because it's not about the clicks. It's not about, the notoriety, although all that stuff's great and it goes along with the program, but just educating other people on exactly how the game's played and the X's and O's. I know you got just as frustrated as I did last year, Dusty, and people can fan how they want to fan, but when you hear just the blanket comments like, this is the only reason this isn't working, right?
Yeah.
Rodgers won't throw across the middle. We heard that forever, right? And it's like, you've got all the evidence in the world that he does throw across the middle, or he didn't throw to the open receiver, but, not understanding why he didn't throw to that receiver,
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm going to do is share the screen here. Let's just jump right into it. And for those of you listening on the pod, we're going to start off with, like I said, it's 2nd and short. Okay. So this is, explain to the listeners, Dusty, what 2nd and short actually means and kind of how a call sheet comes together, 1st and 10, second and long, second and medium, second and short. Explain that to the
Yeah, so
listeners.
it's broken up quite a bit, and different coaches do it different ways. The way I kind of took it off of was the looking broad scale, but also Brian Billick has a tremendous book about, I think it's like crafting an offensive game plan or something. It's less than 100 pages, like it's super small, but I kind of went with that as my basis in terms of like you're breaking these things up. So the way I've got it broken up as far as down distance, there's what 8 main categories: first and 10, second and 7 plus, second and fourth and 4 through 6. Second and 3 or less, then basically third and long, so 3 and 7 plus, third and 4 to 6, 3 and less than 3 yards, and then fourth and short. I mean, you can break it up because you're looking like basically how many times you're in each section. You could do like 4th and 5 plus, but that's kind of one of those like, if you're in those situations, you're kind of screwed. Like you don't, I guess that not kind of screwed. You don't want to have, the whole idea is conceptually, the way you kind of look at it, the way I look at it, and you're kind of doing all this, you can have 120, 300 plays, 300 plays in your playbook. But when you're looking at a game plan, you're looking at, I know the comment in Billick's book I always came back to is, how much offense do you need? You only have so much time to practice in any given week. You've got the install stuff in the off season, but during a given week, you've got, 60, 65, 70 plays maybe in the NFL. And so you're looking at, okay, how do I maximize time for this opponent? You're breaking it down to, 60-ish, 60, 70 plays. And obviously you have some other stuff. You got like some red zone plays and stuff I'm throwing in there as well. But that's basically the way you're looking at it is, I've got 300 plays. I can't practice 300 plays. How do I whittle that down into something that makes sense in these down and distances? Then you're also looking at like average plays per game down and distance. So you've got, 25 roughly first and 10 plays. But then once you get down here to second 3, you've got 5 plays a game. So you don't want, this is even something I struggled with. I'm not creating a game plan here, but I'm looking going, yeah, they really have got, 8 plays that worked really well on second and less than 3. Well, that you don't want. If you do that for every section, then now you've got 7 plays instead of 5. And now instead of, 70 plays you're practicing in a given week, you're bloated up to 90, which is kind of the problem. So you're basically trying to whittle down. And my project here, as you know as well as I do, Clayton, if this was an actual game plan, you're looking so much at the next opponent and, what do they do? Are they a too high? Are they light up front? Do we run it around? Like in a real, if you're really doing this, you're shifting around a little more. This is really my way to, every year I like to kind of look back on the season, how they do conceptually, how they do these different things. This is my way to kind of like, how can I make this more interesting for everybody to kind of recap the year, what they did well, what they didn't do well, and make it a little more interesting. This was my way to do that. So it's kind of forced me then to, whittle down what I'm talking about or what I'm writing about any given week in terms of what was successful here without making it bloated. That's probably way too much language I just used, Clayton.
No, dude, I'm geeking out right now, dude. I know there's some listeners that are the same way. And, Pat Kerwin talked about it in his book, Take Your Eye Off the Ball. Bill Belichick within his building, they talked about how they would game plan for upcoming opponents, right? And they would typically do a 4-game saturation. So they would look at the last 4 games of that opponent, and they would watch every single play on offense, defense, and special teams. And then they would take their last 2 matchups where they played that team head to head. And what that means, guys, is, what he's talking about is molding a game plan around, okay, what did you do really well against them? What did they do well against you? How can you avoid some of the hiccups you had the first time? And it's why it's so hard to beat a team 2 times in a row. And it's not the fact that they become familiar with you as much as it is a head game, right, Dusty? Because really what you're doing as a coach is you're going in and going, man, we dominated that last game, but they're going to be looking for that. So do we need to change that up, and how much do we need to change that up?
It becomes like that. I know what you know, but you do know what I know that you know that I know. It becomes you can outthink yourself at a certain point if you do some of that. But yeah, it absolutely gets into some of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have some of those confidants within the building of a coaching staff. Some of the people, I think it was Ernie Accorsi, I think was his name with Belichick. That was like, people would joke and say, the people that were outside the building was, I couldn't tell you what he does. He was basically Belichick's right-hand man. And I think he retired last year, if I remember right. And he was the guy that you guys remember the Malcolm Butler interception. I know this isn't a Patriots podcast, but I'm just so infatuated with Belichick's career and being able to watch one of the greatest to ever coach in real time. You got to try to pick up on stuff. But watching Malcolm Butler make that interception against the Seahawks in the end zone to seal the Super Bowl, and what went really unnoticed, and you've seen I think it was think it was called Do Your Job was the special that they did on NFL Network. And they talked about how Ernie was the guy who found that play and found that, hey, they like to do this in a passing situation. The clock's crunched down and it's late in the game or late in the half and they're inside the 5. They like to run this little pass play. And he basically had them practice that all week long leading up to the Super Bowl. And lo and behold, that decided the game. And some people can hear this and go, oh, it's about the best team on the field. And I get that. I understand, players win games and coaches lose them. That's Belichick 101. But when it comes down to it, man, you've got to be prepared. And what Dusty pointed out here on second and short, said on average, the Packers faced 4 second and short plays per game in 2022. In this situation, they had a success rate of 76.8%, which ranked them second in the league behind the Bengals. They gained a first down in this situation 69.6% of the time, 4th in the league. Their average gain of 5.2 yards in this situation ranked them 9th in the league. Overall, some room for improvement, but a nice performance in the situation in 2022. Let's build the call sheet. So first up on the call sheet, and you can see this screen, right, Dusty?
I can.
Awesome. All right. So first up on the call sheet, you've got a passing play, right? You got strike. And with this specific concept, they averaged 11.5 yards per attempt, guys. I mean, this is when I was seeing some of these numbers, Dusty, I was like, I don't remember the offense being this effective. But in a second and short, man, you've really got that defense on their heels. So this play that we're going to talk about, first of all, the strike concept. Just explain to them real quick this graphic we got on the screen here that's showing exactly what a strike concept is.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, if you've been watching the Packers offense, they didn't run it. This is like one of the core staples, what's called the constraint play off that kind of wide zone pass boot action they do. And the Packers didn't. I don't think they ran it until very late in 2019 with LaFleur. And this is one of the key plays. Actually, Kevin Clark at The Ringer had a great story with LaFleur and Rodgers and wrote about this play specifically. Kind of a staple of the Shanahan offense, of a lot of these offenses do this stuff. If you hear it, it sounds kind of ridiculous. It's basically a one-man concept. There's 2 routes. It's basically a one-man route. The Christian Watson touchdown you lead the show off with, that's this concept. Yep. So it's basically you can run out a bunch of different stuff. That Watson one was run, I think, out of a stack look, but it's basically a guy from one side of the line runs a streak, just some kind of basically run the coverage off of one side, and the guy from the other side runs a dig, and you're running that. It's like a 12-yard inbreaker, 12 to 15-yard inbreaker route over the middle of the field, and it's run solely off play action. And the I don't have the blocking stuff up on the screen, but it's basically wide zone blocking. So you get this kind of like wide zone blocking. Everyone's moving laterally down the line. You fake the handoff, and what makes this effective is because you get defenses kind of looking for some of this stuff now. They bite on the play action, then they're looking for those crossers behind them because you're looking for the quarterback to boot out the other way. You've got some time to catch up. This one is right after the play fake. Quarterback sticks his foot in the ground, quick pivot back, and you hit that dig across the middle. And this is one, I mean, they had some issues with this occasionally, but this has been one of the best, most effective passing concepts for the Packers in the past 3 years. Teams have changed how they play it. So there are times against the Niners in the playoffs a couple years ago, this didn't do anything because the Niners changed how they played play action altogether. But you're basically looking for, you hit that back foot, quick pivot, linebackers are pulled up, and you're just basically hitting behind them is all it is. It's very, very simple, but it's a lot of this where like the wide zone rushing stuff comes into effect. The play action bootleg comes in. All that stuff goes to set up something like this, that you're just looking to hit a quick pass in the middle of the field, quick and easy, and you're picking up 15, 20 yards a pop when you complete that sucker.
Love it. Love it. And this play that we're showing right now on screen too, just to kind of call it out, it was very unique because if you notice, Big Dog is outside on this play, right? He's lined up kind of on the boundary. And I would call this formation, this setup, 12 gun, Z left, motion to Y, H strong, tailback weak. Again, 11.5 yards per attempt in this situation when running strike. And with the strike concept, as you can see here, we're going to roll it here one time just to kind of show what we meant by Z. This would be considered, in my opinion, you may disagree, Dusty, most of the time, opposite the tight end side on the line of scrimmage is your X receiver, and then typically your Z is off the line. The problem is this is your big tight end out here, flexed out. What would be considered Z, which is actually the tight end, he's going to motion back to Y. So he's just trying to create a little bit of movement there, right? A little bit of confusion. He's also getting Aaron Rodgers as much information as possible. And then, of course, as the play unfolds here, like Dusty pointed out, this is your strike concept. Explain it to him here, Dusty.
Yes, you're going to have, I mean, we're going to see him. He's at a shotgun. A lot of times you run this under center. You've got the streak from the left and just that dig coming from the right. If you want to run that back, then so that's Dobbs on the right. So we're going to have, you'll just see Lazard. I think that's Lazard on the left is running a streak. You can see right there, the linebacker's pulled up. You got that big spot behind him. Dobbs kind of pulls up. He's pushing that boundary defender. Rodgers is set. Fires that sucker right between. Now they kind of shaded that way with the linebacker, so you had to kind of shoot the gap between those linebackers there. But that's basically it. You're clearing space on one side, and it's a replace route. Basically, you're running behind where the linebackers are pulled up for the play action on the other side, and you're just hitting right behind them. Like that's as simple as it gets right there. You can see him pulled up. Even what's he? I think that's Lavonte David. He's one step up, one step over, and that's all it takes. Kind of hesitate a little bit with the play action keys up front. And he just hit him right behind. Middle of the field, that's a piece of cake, man. If you got those linebackers pulled up.
Did you just say middle of the field, Dusty? I thought he didn't throw to the middle of the field.
No, here's what I'll say, Clayton. He will throw to the middle of the field, but I did do a study on this. Not that that's what we're talking about now. Since the beginning of 2019, there's like 65 qualifying quarterbacks as far as throwing to the middle of the field. Rodgers was 63rd. Yeah, and there's been he will target the middle of the field on play action, and aside from that, very rarely. So that's one thing because I went to dig into stuff. I was like, he throws the middle of the field. I know he does. And then I looked at all the numbers and went, oh no, he doesn't. He avoids the middle of the field. Like compared to the rest of the league, man, he avoids the middle of the field like the play. But play action, he'll target middle of the field. I think like 60% of the balls off play action, he'll target middle of the field. They just don't run play action a ton.
This is such a beautiful play, though. Again, guys, just so you know what started off as the slot receiver with Lazard is now just basically he becomes the boundary receiver, and the ball snapped. Look, there's the zone blocking that you were talking about up front. They sell this offensive line. This looks like a run right here, and you can see the Packers. They have got to own that. Now they're looking for their releases right here. This is the best right here in the middle. I guess is that David right there? Or is he the?
I think David's on the other side. I think he's the two Dobbs side. I think that's David. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Whoever this backer is in the middle, boy, he was completely fooled because right here he's like, oh crap.
You can see him trying to get back, and it does not work well for him.
I love it, dude. That's like taking Mountain Dew from a baby right there, man. I'm telling you right now, dude. It don't get any better. Let's move on to the next play. This one comes and this is what you call Hank Jet, right? And
I do.
Man, this is Matt LaFleur 101. This is Sean McVay 101. This is a little bit of that Kyle Shanahan, that motion that just causes confusion. You just seen Mercedes obviously line up on the boundary, then attach at the Y, create a little bit of confusion there, a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of eye candy. But I would call this 11 gun strong right, halfback same, Z motion. You call it Hank Jet. Let's talk about it here, man. I'm going to put you on the screen here and let you see this play from start to finish. And again, on this play here, when it comes to Hank Jet, you were talking about 11.0 yards per attempt. That's a good chunk on second and short. That's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, and honestly, some of this stuff gets a little tricky because, you're looking at however many plays throughout the course of a year. I have it up in front of me. 4 to 5 times per game, so whatever that amounts to. Not a ton. And so the sample size is relatively small with some of the passes. So that is high, but they only ran this a couple times. And so Hank is a relatively simple concept, and they dress it up a bit. So Hank is that on the right side. If we back it up a little bit there, Clayton, it's Lazard and DeGuara. Hank itself is a hitch route from the outside and a flat route underneath. So you got right there. And so what you're doing is that's a quick read. Now, the way they dress it up here, a couple different ways. You got the jet motion. I think that's from Watson. So you do have kind of that's basically your alert on the play. And so if that boundary defender is kind of tied up and he's looking from the jump, if he's looking like he doesn't know what's going on and the safeties don't rotate or whatever, you throw that deep. And so that's kind of a built-in. You got a built-in shot. If you don't do that, then you read short. So you're looking hitch flat. The way Hank usually works is the hitch is usually covered, but you're tying up a linebacker from the inside. It doesn't work that way here. You're tying up a linebacker from the inside, essentially a natural pick route, and then the flat is open. And then so none of that's open here. So I picked this play because I like it, but you've got the backside route is what wins. I think like the actual concept itself is a very good second and short one. Now the Hank is not open here. That little hitch flat isn't open, but on the backside, they've got Dobbs as the X running a little out and in, deep out and in, man. Like he sells that out. Then he comes back in, kind of a very deep pivot route. Rodgers throws it up and away. Dobbs is able to catch it and make a first down. So I picked this one. We talked a little bit before the show. I watched this stuff. I look at the numbers, and then I watch the plays. And some of them I toss out because they're extended plays. And that doesn't mean anything when you're creating a call sheet. If you gain 20 yards on a play, but it only may work because the quarterback ran around for 8 seconds, like that's not a good play. I picked this one specifically because the concept itself is a sound concept. You've got the deep alert. And also that works really well for the short yardage stuff, even though if it didn't work here. But I really like that backside action there as well. That pivot route from Dobbs, who sells it really, really well, really sinks into that route there and then comes back. So it's, again, not the cleanest rep on this in terms of like working to the concept itself, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I like that can be successful, even if one portion of it is not.
Yeah, I mean, you see options all over the field here. And like you said, they covered Hank very, very well. But like you said, the pre-snap motion there with Watson, he's basically running a big wheel route, right? I mean, he's just hitting the sideline. And then you've got, of course, the Hank concept if it's covered up. Now, let's pretend here for a second that this backer actually drops and covers this out and in, right, on Dobbs. Then what do you got coming out of the backfield? Aaron Jones, right? Just that quick swing pass. Options everywhere. I love it, man. Good stuff. And again, it's obvious that, with that kind of yards per attempt, man, that's a go-to play there for sure. Let's move on to the next one, man. The third one you had on the call sheet. Let's see. Is this? Yeah, this is where we get into a little RPO action, right?
We've got one RPO. So their RPO game was up, but their RPO game was not great this past year. And most of their RPO, I put this one in here partially because I'm looking back at last year, but also partially because I'm looking forward to this next year. So I'm seeing like, what do they have in? And so this is a review of what they did last year. What they have in that worked in certain situations. But I'm also trying to keep in mind for some of this stuff, it's Jordan Love. What could he bring that maybe Rodgers didn't? I think we talked about this the last time I was on. Rodgers, as much as Rodgers seemed to love RPO game, Rodgers hated the post-snap RPOs. So those pre-snap RPOs, you're reading numbers and you're reading leverage, and it's a horizontal, usually a bubble pass to the outside. And if we've got more guys than they do, we're going to throw that bubble. Now, defenses kind of started taking that away and basically dictating what the Packers did there. And they also don't have Devontae Adams to throw to. And so a lot of that yards after catch, which is what the RPO throw itself hinges on, was not there. And so I think that's going away a little bit, but there is the post-snap RPO is where you're reading a conflict defender. We'll get into that here. You're reading a conflict defender after the snap. You're reading a single man after the snap and saying, if this man is part of the run fit, I throw it. If this man falls back under the throw, then we're going to hand it off the run because they're -1 on the run game. This specific one, I think, is from week 2. Yeah, there we go. I got some even stuff here. So this is what we're looking at
fancy right here, man.
This is fancy. This is fancy. So what they're going to do, and this was early in the season, they got away from the power run game a little. That's one of the things. I really want to see them go back to the power run game, and I think they will with a little more continuity on offensive line. So that's like pullers. This is going to be their pin pull stuff on to the left side. So you've got this YY wing set to the left side. Now you're going to get into some of that stuff with the 2 tight ends. Those guys are going to block down, and then you're swinging the center and the tackle, and you're basically pulling into kind of a sweep look to the left side. So that's the run action, which is where this ends up going. They hand off there. They're going to run. A.J. Dillon's going to follow those big boys to the edge, and he's going to get it. Now, what's going to happen? What he's not going to do, he's not going to throw, but you're reading that conflict defender. He's got a backside linebacker. If that guy, you're reading the simple glance route, which is just basically I'm running 2 steps up the field, running vertically, veering slightly towards the middle of the field, and I'm looking back at the quarterback, getting eyes on him. If that linebacker does not fall under the route, you pull up and you fire that stuff. We saw Love do some of that stuff at Utah State, not a ton, but we did see him do some of that at Utah State. If that guy stays back and the throw isn't open, I hand it off. Simple read, reading a single man. It's something, again, I think because Rodgers didn't do it, they built more of this stuff into the playbook this season. But Rodgers just never threw it. He threw 2 or 3. But even on those post-snap reads, he's reading it pre-snap anyway, and he's firing up and throwing, I think, because of tape study or something. He did not like reading a defender. I think Love will be – but they built that stuff in. I think they wanted to get to this kind of game. He just wasn't throwing it. But I think something like this, that worked well here, as we see, because he hands off on the power run. So you got advantages both places. You power run, you're pulling guys around, and you're reading a single defender and seeing what he does, and then you decide whether to throw or pass. And they can be a lot more explosive than the RPOs we've seen from the Packers, just because you're getting a guy on the move, moving vertically up the field as opposed to bubbling horizontally towards the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, it puts so much stress on the defense. I mean, it really, really does. And again, this is what I would call 12-gun T-flex motion set, right, twins. And obviously it's an RPO power glance. Now, I'm telling you right now, Michael Wall, we had him on the show yesterday, you know, former guard for the Green Bay Packers, played a little bit of tackle too, played 7 years with the Packers. He's licking his chops watching this power play right here, man. I'm telling you right now, that dude, we broke up some tape yesterday with him, Dusty, and, you know, that big year. I don't know if you were following the Packers as close. I'm sure you were back then. With Amon Green having his big season back in 03. And it was crazy. I pulled up a play random. I didn't tell Mike I was going to do it. And I was like, Mike, I got something for you here. And I shared the screen and he went, this was week 2. I think he said it was week 2, second play from scrimmage. And I looked at the clock and it was 14 minutes in the first. I'm like, how does he remember this? And he said it was raining. He named off everything. I was like, oh my gosh. And dude, he came around and in his specific play, he was the left guard pulling William Henderson. They were coming out of an offset eye. William Henderson basically sprinting the line of scrimmage, hits the defensive end, makes a gap for Mike to pull through and clean out the backer, and Amon was off to the races. So I know he would be licking his chops here, but, you know, it just shows you how the RPO game has evolved so much here when you talk about mixing in power run plays with an RPO glance. And I really appreciate you taking the time to explain what you said there about how Rodgers likes those pre-snaps, you know, those pre-snap reads more so than the post-snap there. He kind of makes his mind up with the numbers game, right? So, love it, man. So, again, like his tweet said, glance RPO off a power look. Quarterback reads the conflict defender on the pass. If he falls under the pass, as he does here, you hand it off. If he's part of the run fit, throw the ball right by his ear, right? Just hum that tater right in there. Love it, man. Love it. All right, let's move on to the next one, man. Now we're going to get into a little bit of inside zone. Obviously, let me go back. I'm sorry, with that play specifically, with power glance or RPOs in general, 11.0 yards per attempt on second and short. Love it. Let's go to inside zone here. Talk to him about inside zone a little bit, Dusty. And I love what you said in the tweet. You said a little inside zone, or is that duo? I love it. Love it. So tell them the difference between inside zone and duo and how you can get mixed up so easy when it comes to those.
Yeah, and a lot of people hit me up on this. I'm like, that's clearly duo. This is one thing. I mean, this is a huge blind spot for me. Is that, and I've mentioned this, I think every single time. It's even in this article. I try to get as in depth as I can with the pass stuff, just because that's the side that I'm more interested in. And the run stuff, I'm like inside zone, outside zone, wide zone. It's like that's basically what I end up doing, because like power anything if it's trap, if it's pin pull, if it's counter, if it's anything, if there's a pulling anything, it's power, and then I just move on because I only got so much time in the day. So duo is, and I can't remember all the exact specifics, but the original way I got into it, it's power without pulling. So inside zone, everyone knows kind of wide zone blocking at this point. You're not blocking a man, you're blocking the zone in front of you. And there's two main camps in that. It's wide zone and inside zone. Wide zone is more you get, what was Anthony Munoz? It was like everyone's on the same track. It's basically trains on a track and you're blocking the man in front of you. You're moving laterally. Inside zone is more vertical pushing. So it's more like at you, you're attacking the guy in front of you. And duo is even more so. So it's been described as power without pulling. You're looking for at least two double teams up front. And the blocking specifics, I don't know that anyone cares about the blocking specifics. It's something
we do.
Is it center blocks away from, if the center blocks away from the tight end? I believe that if there's two double teams, they're looking for two double teams, and the center blocks away from the tight end, and there's one other big identifier, that's a duo. If not, it's inside zone, but the way the zones dictate, it's still. This is why I don't pay a ton of attention to some of that stuff, because you can still have multiple double teams on inside zone. It's just where the man is as far as like the zone blocking scheme dictates. You can still have multiple double teams, and so it's a little nuanced there. But I think it's center blocking backside of the attached tight end and at least two double teams. That's duo. And so apparently, according to people who hit me up on this is clearly duo. And I still am like, that's fine. It's an at you, it's a vertical at you zone blocking scheme is what you're looking at. I just group everything into, again, inside zone if it's inside zone, regardless of everything else, and outside zone or wide zone if it looks wide zone. So it's basically you're looking to get double teams and looking to move guys in front of you, where wide zone is a little more, and we'll get into that, kind of a stretch to the side, and you're looking for your cutback. Inside zone or mid zone, even, there's a little more of kind of like a direct route that the running back's looking to take. There's fewer looking for backside options. You're looking to hit these like one or two specific gaps on the inside. And so it's more of a hammer at you, vertical rushing. We see AJ Dillon in here. AJ Dillon's your inside zone rushing back. Jones can do it. Dillon's the guy if you want to hammer someone a little bit.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And this play here specifically, for those of you listening on the pod, 11A strong left, trips right, motion left, and inside zone run. Let's play it here and just talk about it, Dusty. Tell me what you're seeing here, man. Obviously, you got a little bit of motion there, and you're kind of almost putting Lazard on the wing. I think we're going to miss that with Lazard.
Yeah.
I know we see Christian Watson block a lot. I was going to save this for the backside, and maybe we'll just hit on it briefly right now because I want to ask this question while I'm thinking about it. In this specific situation, when I watched Luke Musgrave play, on his college tape, especially, a year ago, and I look at it and I go, he can do everything Alan Lazard did. I feel confident he can in the receiving game, and the thought of him, in this situation, being able to come over to that wing area and being able to run block. I mean, do you kind of see Luke Musgrave the same way? Like he could play this position right here that Lazard does?
Yeah, I mean, so with the tight end specifically, I temper just because I don't think he's not going to be Lazard in year one, just the intricacies of the game. Like he's not going to be there. But I mean, from the way I've been looking at what he's going to give, that's exactly how I've been looking at it. Because with usually the way I look at the college guys, if it's a tight end, I want him to show that he can block. If I want to see a wide receiver, I want to see that he's willing to block, because you don't have to be a lockdown blocker in college for a lot of those guys, but you have to show you're willing. Can you lose slowly? Can you get in the guy's way? Like for a tight end, I want to see him muscle some dudes. For a wide receiver, I want to see, are you willing and do you know where you're supposed to be enough to get in a guy's way? For Luke Musgrave, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy, and maybe I'm wrong, who's going to be a lockdown blocker. But if he can be like basically the mold of a big wide receiver who can get down and block and can basically like get in a dude's way, he looks like he's willing to do that. I don't think in year one he's going to be that, but down the line, I've been looking at him the same way. He's a larger Alan Lazard, hopefully. Like I honestly, I don't know if he's ever going to be the blocker Alan Lazard is, but he's bigger, and so if he can just get in guys' way, like that does a lot, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lazard, the thing that I noticed about him, and Mike Wall talked about it the first time we had him on the show, was how you get to confrontation determines how you handle confrontation. And to me, Lazard, especially in the running game, he always showed good balance. This play here wasn't the best look, probably not the best example, but so many times. And another one, though, as we roll the tape here, and for those of you listening on the pod, the guy that's in the inside receiving spot on the right side there, now that Lazard has kind of moved over to the wing, is Christian Watson. Look at him out here, Dusty.
Oh, I know.
It's amazing, man.
I mean, he did that stuff in college. We got to see him doing that year one, dude. It's very impressive.
It's technique too. You know what I mean? It's he's not the beefiest guy on the field. He's one of those guys. He looks a lot slimmer than most receivers. But man, when you look at his footwork and his technique, he is not going to be beat inside there. He's gonna at least slow that guy down and create that wall there. And
he's square. Yeah, he's got his legs back, like really good form on that. That's the thing. Like Watson there, like I think he's in good position. He loses slowly. He gets pushed to the middle, but that guy does not affect the play. Like that's all you want from your wide receiver, especially rookie wide receiver. He's outside. And I mean, there's multiple things this year of Watson blocking well and running plays. Like I'm a big fan. So yeah, I mean, this play, I guess, you got a couple double teams. You do have center block and backside away from the tight end. The biggest thing here, and I guess you're some of the running keys as well also factor into duo. That's the other one. You can see, and I mentioned this at some point, you can see Dillon. It's 54. Is that Leighton Vander Esch 55 right there? Watch Dillon. He's running straight at him. See how he sets him up. He makes him pick the wrong gap, who gets caught up in the wash, and then a quick cut back to the right. And so I think all along he knows he's taken that right side with the BA gap, I guess. But he sets up Vander Esch there. He kind of runs at him, forces him to keep his feet in place, and then cuts back through the middle. So really on this one, and I mean, the running game as a whole was not great this year, partially because of the offensive line was not great. Really good movement on some of the inside zone stuff, especially the duo stuff. When you're kind of helping those guys out a little bit more, get those multiple double. I mean, that's Running and Myers just muscling the guy. Yeah. Big E gets inside his dude with Bakhtiari, and then Bakhtiari is able to kind of move up second level there. So really, really good rep from the basically the point of attack right there.
Absolutely. And Myers, like you said, helping right here with, I guess, what would be considered the two technique. Might be a 2-eye, looks more like a 2. And he's going to help out on that 2 tech and then get right around and seal off that backer. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, Myers had kind of an up and down year. This was a good rep from him for sure. It might be the next one. Like I'm talking about good about Myers now. I think the next one we're talking about, I think Myers gets wiped off the face of the earth. Like it still is a positive play, but I got to say some good stuff because this next rep is not good for Myers, man. Yeah, it says right there, Myers driven back immediately. It's not good, man. It's not good, but he was good on the inside zone one.
and you could see him get to the next level so many times, but then it was just inconsistent, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike kind of talked about it again, you know, when we were talking offensive line play. It's like, you know, every player that makes it to the NFL is a good football player, right? What separates the good from the great, and especially at the offensive line position, it's just mastering the footwork. You know, we had Jacob in the comments section ask Mike. He said, "Do you think Rasheed Walker could play himself into that backup role and eventually a starter?" And he said, "If you want to know the answer to that question, watch his feet, because everybody at this level is strong enough. Everybody at this
Mm-hmm.
level." They have the size, they have the physical ability. It's, are they willing to put in the time to master the technique, the footwork? That's what it comes down to. He said you can find many offensive linemen who just are crazy strong and have crazy size. You know, Josh Myers,
Tony Mandarich.
and they don't make a good blocker. And you could find someone that's a little undersized, but if they've got the footwork, you can tell they're going to be in the league for quite some time. You know, one of the people that comes to mind for me was Ross Tucker. You know, Ross Tucker wasn't like this Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman. He was a journeyman, played for several teams, but there was a reason teams kept calling. And it's because his footwork was solid and he had a quick get off, right? You got those two things, man. Like Mike said, your 90% success hinges on that footwork, right? And with Josh Myers, man, I since I've watched the game of football, and especially a Packer fan, I can't think of another center that has that size, that has that athletic ability. And it's so frustrating because you see it, you see flashes, and then here comes the inconsistencies. And part of me wants to hope that, you know, maybe Aaron kind of muddied the water a little bit. And you guys know I'm not an Aaron Rodgers hater. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I love Aaron. I love 12, love what he did with the organization. You know, hearing him scold Josh Myers on national television, Josh snapped the effing ball, right? And stuff like that. It makes me wonder, will Josh settle down a bit? Because you could see him pressing. You really could. So again, that inside run, though, 6.0 yards per attempt on that. And let's move on to the last play on the call sheet, which is wide zone. And this specific play here, Dusty, I'm just going to go ahead and set the stage and then let you kind of call it out. I've got 12A strong left, jet motion X. You call them wide zone here. You can see we've got the offensive line, you know, overloaded to the right side of the defense, left side from the offense's perspective. Talk to me here about this wide zone, because this is when you hear Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, it's wide zone boot, wide zone boot. You know, that's kind of everything that this whole offense has been geared around. Let's talk about this play here, man. What do you see?
Yeah, just briefly, yeah. It's the engine that makes the whole thing go. If wide zone isn't working, large parts of we talked about that strike, drift, PA, bang. The very first concept we looked at, that doesn't work unless the wide zone's working. Like that's basically and what you're looking for, roughly speaking. Again, like Anthony Munoz has talked about, like he's a Hall of Fame offensive lineman in wide zone stuff. Instead of, you're not blocking man, you're running down the tracks, and he said trains on a track, and you're blocking the man in front of you, and you're going down. And what you're trying to do is you're aiming for the coaching point. I don't think I've written this, but the coaching point in wide zone technically is they say the butt crack of the tackle to the play side. So that's what you're looking for. That's the aiming point for the running back. And then you're looking for the way that naturally does. You've seen that as Packers fans, we saw Terrell Davis do it in the Super Bowl, real painful stuff, but you're running laterally down the line. That offensive line is kind of moving laterally down the route line. The running back is following those blocks. His aiming point is the tackle's butt crack, but he's also looking for cutbacks, because that's what you naturally have. You're moving laterally down the line, trying to create gaps down that line, and you're taking wherever the gaps occur. Sometimes that's front side. A lot of times the most devastating ones are if you get a backside cutback and there's no one there. Teams are better about covering this up a bit, but yeah, this is, again, it's when you think about those offenses, this is the concept that makes the whole thing go. If your wide zone's broken, you've got parts of your offensive playbook that simply do not work until you get that fixed.
Absolutely. And I remember when Brian Kelly, I'm a Notre Dame fan. Kentucky Wildcat, Notre Dame is like my two football teams, right? So I've basically got one football team. But with that being said, you're in Lexington, you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
So when he came into Notre Dame and they were talking about they were going to run these stretch plays, these outside zone plays, immediately I'm thinking I'm getting this envision of them cutting the corner, right? And this is over a decade ago, which it's just amazing how time goes by so fast. But I'm thinking of them cutting the corner and hitting the sidelines, and it's no, dude. You were stretching that defense thin. You're stretching them horizontally so you can find a cutback lane. And like you said, right off the hip, right off the butt crack, however you want to say it, you're cutting upfield, and you're trying to get that defense to flow in one direction and then cut back off of it. And here you can see there's already a little bit of confusion off the snap or pre-snap.
Well, that's the Bears.
Yeah, this right here is hilarious because you see Six a little bit late here, right? He's trying to get to his spot. So he comes from one side of the field to the other here. He's trying to get in position. Watch it freeze up on me now as soon as we go to do it. We knew it was going to happen, right? I've got this Tennessee internet, man. It ain't good. I promise you. See if we can get it to roll here. Look at it spinning, Dusty. This is good. Good podcast.
It wants to, man. It's trying to so hard, brother.
I know it, man. I got to get a bigger extension cord to run out of the holler here, man. That's the only way we're going to make this one. But anyway, what I was trying to point out is it spins here. It may not load. This happened when I was working on it offline here, but Six gets to his spot finally, and then what do you see? You see Christian Watson come streaking across, right? Yep. He's like, crap. So you're already putting stress on the play here. Let's see if we can go to another one and get it to pull up. If we can get one.
I mean, that's the thing with the jet stuff too, right? Like it's always, and defenses are doing better with it now, but it's when there's a lot of the play calls, a lot of defensive play calls are based on strength of the offense, and so it depends on when that guy crosses the center line as far as what happens. So you see some shifting, and so technically the passing strength is still to one side if you snap it when he's outside the center versus when he crosses the center. And so teams are way better now. But when that first started coming up, all the jet motion stuff, that really was a huge problem. And it still is to some extent, especially a guy with the speed of Watson. But you're basically changing the strength of the formation at times, which then can change the entire structure of the defense. And you're trying to deal with that on the fly. And then you got a guy like Christian Watson who runs like a 4.2, something like flying across. It'll sow some confusion. And if you're the Bears, it'll sow a lot of confusion apparently.
Yeah. And again, we can't get it to roll right now. I apologize for that, but pretty much explained everything about the wide zone there. You're basically getting that defense flowing in one direction. And I'm trying to remember if this was a run to the the way we're looking at the screen here. Was it a run right or left? Was it weak or strong run here?
I think it went strong.
Strong. Okay.
Do not have it in front of me. I can see if I can find it on my side real quick and run it by myself and just kind of look to see. Oh, I think I can do this. Yeah, I'll run it real quick just for all the listeners who are like, well, tell us, man. Was it wide? Was it strong or not? Here we go. Let's see.
Here we go. We got it now.
Do we?
All right. So
no, that was he went weak side. It looks like.
Yeah.
So away from jet, they went weak side away from the jet motion there. Yeah.
That makes me so excited because look at this setup, guys. Like when you look, you've got this guy way outside here. You've got a one tech in the middle, right? And that's it. And you talk about getting more than a hat on a hat here. I mean, look at this numbers game here. And again, what you pointed out earlier too, Dusty, watch these backers when Christian Watson comes streaking across. Like they took those completely out of the play, right?
Yeah, they shifted completely. You basically have, the one I struggle on, I mentioned Myers loses because Myers loses real bad on this, but he gets his man out of the way. He basically rides him back behind the backfield there. So listen, not a great rep for Myers, but he's able, and Dylan's able to sidestep a bit there, but he's able to he gets him out of the play. The man runs himself out of the play, and Josh Myers rides his back is essentially how that ends up working out. So not a great rep, but the guy didn't make the play. So hooray, I guess.
Hey, we'll take it, man. Especially after last year, we'll take everything we can get.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. And you see right here, with right guard, he's going to get out here at the next level. Poor number 6. He granted, 70 didn't take him out, right? But 6 is like, I don't want no part of that. You kidding me?
Yeah, that's what Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson had some not a great year in general, but some rough games against the Packers this past year.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love it, dude. And like you said, man, that's the staple. And the fact that they ran weak right there was just absolutely awesome. I love it, man. That's good stuff. So I got to ask you, man, obviously with the call sheet going forward, what's the plan this year as we get closer to the season? Because I don't know how you look at the offseason but I don't find myself going, man, I wish the season would hurry up and get here. Sometimes I find myself going, I don't have enough time to figure out what actually happened last year, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to dive deeper into it and understand exactly what we saw on the field. And that way, you don't really know what to look for this coming year if you don't understand what did and did not work the year before. But as we get ready to step into training camp and then obviously into the preseason, regular season, what's the plan with the call sheet this year?
Yeah, so I mean, my plan, I'd like to say that I have this all planned out and timed up in a certain way, and the truth is I don't. I mean, it's set up in a certain way to where it's going to take me a while to get through it, and a lot of these clips are already pulled, and I've got everything kind of, most of it not written, but like I've got play diagrams written up and all that stuff, and so the plan is weekly, on Wednesdays going up. And just going for a bit. I mean, I'm with you. I think the off seasons for me are usually after the season's done. I take a beat because I run myself ragged during the season, and like the thought of writing about football at a certain point, I was like, I physically I cannot do this. I can't imagine, and I work a desk job anyway. I can't imagine sitting at a desk tonight and writing about football. So I take some time. And then once I kind of get back into it, I'm into it. And it's some of it's a bit of, looking back on the season, especially this year, looking back on the season to look forward. Because a lot of people have been asking, what's the offense going to look like with Jordan Love? And they expect, wholesale changes, which is not realistic. Like it's going to look 80% the same roughly. But in most off seasons and this off season, more or less the same. I'm looking back on last year, what worked, what didn't, why didn't it work? Why did it work? And then usually I try to take up some kind of project. I watch another offense or read some books trying to, like last year I tried to I don't know anything about special teams. Let me learn some about special teams, almost like further education on some of this stuff. So by the time the season starts, I'm hyped for the season, but also, I feel like there's 2 more books I wanted to read. There was 1 more offense I wanted to watch, you know what I mean? So it does kind of sneak up on me a bit, but I mean, it's going to be weekly hitting this stuff until it comes out. So next week's going to be 3rd and long. So between 3rd and 4th down, that's 4 more weeks. And then I think, I've got it in front of me. I don't have the schedule. I do on my call sheet though. I've got two weeks to red zone. So one high red zone. So 10 to 20. And then the other one 0 to 9 would be the low red zone. I think I've got maybe 1 short yardage, but one of the big ones I just kind of added recently, I'm kind of excited about is explosives. I've not even looked at this yet. I think before last year, it was kind of this, how are they going to generate explosives without Davante Adams? Because he was like 40% of their games on explosive passes was Davante Adams. And I've not really looked at that. And so that's one more thing I'm going to add before I get done with this whole project. So like 4 more weeks for down and distance, 2 weeks for red zone. So that's 6 weeks. And then 7th week is going to be explosives. So it's going to be just if we need to dial up something, here's 3 plays that worked for us this past year. The strike is definitely going to be on there just because that has been, I mean, they broke that one so much and they ran it so much this past year, but I don't know what else is going to be on there. In the past, it's always been slot fade routes, Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, and they missed on a lot of those this year. So I think that's going to be missing. So that's one, as I go through this, I'm excited because every week I'm scrapping a play here or there because it didn't end up working. And I got to find something else. It's been fun. It's been eye-opening, but the explosives is like, I'm hyped to get to that because that's been something I've been kind of curious about. I don't know why I just thought of it like this past week. Oh, I should look at that as well. Because that's been, I mean, they've been dink and dunk for a lot of this year. I know a lot of people have talked about the length of their drives. And that's hard to do. I mean, the West Coast offense is based around that short passing game. It's hard to be perfect. You can't go 19 plays every single drive, man. Like you just can't do it. So you got to generate explosives, but now more than ever, as teams are trying to kind of hold the offenses down a little bit, you need to hit stuff over the top. I'm really curious to see like what they were successful with and what they weren't this past year.
It's amazing because like just talking about everything you just covered and the time and the thought process that goes in, and then you think about a coaching staff putting together an entire playbook, an entire offseason program. And it's just like, man, those guys are earning that paycheck. There's no doubt. And it's funny because like you were talking about catching up right now. I don't know if you can see that. I'm
still, Bobby Peters.
Yeah. I'm still in 2020. Like you know what I mean? And I'm going through this like, oh, this is like gospel. This is great stuff. And Matt LaFleur is probably looking at that going, God, we can't even go back to that. You know, we never see it again. But,
it's funny because I went back to one of his. So Bobby wrote a book on the 2018 Titans, their passing offense, which was LaFleur's year play caller there. And so when I did something this past week with Tyler Brook over at Acme Packing Company about what the offense is going to look like
I seen
going
that
forward. one of the plays I pulled, I was like, I know they did some middle of the field stuff with Tennessee, and I was looking for a very specific play. I went there, and those books are amazing because he's got it all indexed. He's like,
Yeah.
here's how it worked. Here's when it worked. Here's when it didn't. And then here's the game and the down, the distance. And so I was able to pull up a play from H Post from that Tennessee Titans year, 2018 year, thanks to one of those. I don't know if you can see it behind me. I got a shelf of books behind me. I basically have a Bobby Peters section behind me. I've got like 8 of his books sitting back there from different offenses. Tremendous stuff, dude.
It's so in depth, but it's also so simple. It's straight to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's cut and dry. I love everything about it, man. It's just like my personality. Boring. If someone just picked up that book, they try to read it as a book. Like, I want to learn about this. They'd be like, "This is boring." No, this is not boring. This is Lord of the Rings stuff to me.
That's
right
the good
bro.
stuff right there, dude.
That's the good stuff.
Well, to your point too, I've thought about that as well. Not to harp on that point, but I mean, even when I'm putting this together, and I've thrown as many caveats on it as I possibly can, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to replicate anything that goes on in the Packers room, because this is basic stuff. I mean, I'm looking at, like you said, I'm saying this is strike, and that's all I'm doing. And then you're calling out the line call, not the line calls, but you're calling out what you would call it, like the basically everything additional, the personnel, the formation, the movement, all of that stuff. I don't have any of that, because for me to try to like push all that together for everything doing, again, I'm putting this all together during the week, during the season, I would lose my mind. And so this is like as simplistic as I can get. I've got strike, and strike went for 11 yards and second and short. Like, if you took that into the Packers room and you're like, hey, look, run this play on second short, it's like, get out of here. What are you, an idiot? Like, get out of, like, there's nothing to this. You gave me a simple concept and a down and distance. Like, this is nothing. So ultimately, this is, I mean, a very simplistic look at which is all I'm trying. I'm trying to understand it a little better. I'm trying not to get bogged down in it too much. So it is very simplistic, but yeah, I try to think of like the work I've tried to do into this, and then what an actual NFL offense will do. There's no way to replicate that, man.
Right. No, there really isn't. And what I like about your approach, and it's why I call you the Greg Cosell of Packer fans, is because Greg Cosell, he doesn't come from a standpoint or an angle of, look how smart I am. And he'll point it out. He's like, look, I'm not going to cover every little intricacy about this offense, but here's what they do well. Here's what they're focusing on. Now, how can they use this draft class? How can they use this free agent, signing, as far as deployment and how they're going to fit in to their specific role within the offense. And that's really what it comes down to, which I wanted to get your take on this before we wrap up. A couple of different questions here. Jayden Reed, with what you've seen of Jayden Reed, man, I got to be honest, Dusty, when they drafted him, I swung around here and looked at my draft board, and I was like, what did I miss? Like, how did I? And it's funny because when they traded back the first time, like I was telling Mike yesterday, I was like, oh, they've got somebody that they like that they don't think anyone else is on. And then they traded back again, and I'm like, who could this be? Like, and I'm looking at Jalen Hyatt, and I'm like, that was, excuse my language, but I was like, that was ballsy to just know that Jalen Hyatt isn't going to be taken. And I was convinced it was going to be Jalen Hyatt. And
There's
then when they
a lot
took
of
Jayden
smoke
Reed,
around that, dude.
I went, who's Jayden Reed? What just happened? But then when you go back, the one thing I learned this year, and I always try to make notes every year after the draft, I go, what did I not see going into this draft?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's plain as day to me that Goody is not afraid to go back and look 1 year before. And those players that really shine 1 year before, maybe they had quarterback play that was down this current year, but the year before with decent quarterback play, maybe a better O-line, better offensive coordinator, whatever, they're willing to go back and go, hey, look, here's when they shined. Because, again, I heard Belichick talk about this one time, and Michael Lombardi talked about on his podcast, them being in a draft room and people, even just building the draft board, and people constantly telling Belichick what a player can't do. And finally, Belichick's like, I don't care what he can't do. What can he do? That's what I want to know. What can he bring to the table? And when it comes to Jayden Reed, what do you see there, man? What pops out to you? And as far as some of the plays, the footage that you've seen of the Packers offense last year, can you see him kind of filling a role as a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, I know Packers fans, and I'm part of that as well. The Raz game, we get so caught up in the Raz stuff, the relative athletic score, and Reed did not score high on that for a couple different reasons. Part of it was I think he had some kind of injury before his testing, so I think his 40 was relatively slow. He's a little on the smaller side, and so the Packers generally have certain thresholds that they will hold to. So if you follow the Raz board, more often than not, you're going to be right. And he tested a little below that. I think he was like a 7.5, something like that. For me, I think I'm one of the few people who was like, I love Amari Rodgers. It's sad he didn't work out, but I was like, I think if they gave this guy a chance, he could play. I think he had a very specific role he can fill. I think Jaden Reed could be like a supersized version of what I always hoped Amari Rodgers would be. He's got speed and athleticism, because Rodgers, like, even at his best, like, he wasn't the fastest guy, was not the most athletic guy, but he was a willing blocker with good hands. Now, for whatever reason, I think Rodgers hated him, and I've heard some stuff like he did not necessarily know the playbook as well as he should have, and that contributed to some of it. But he's a guy who is not necessarily a gadget guy because the athleticism wasn't there, but a dude who would stick a little undersized. You could use him in the backfield, kind of Randall Cobb basically, had no issue sticking his nose and blocking, and had a good enough, even if he wasn't fast, good enough short area quickness to do some stuff in some of the quick passing game, which Rodgers loves. And I don't know if Love is as good as that Rodgers. He clearly isn't at this point in his career, because Rodgers, in my book, is like an all-timer in terms of like quick passing game and kind of seeing where people are and diagnosing that coverage quickly and the quick trigger and all of that. So Love is not at that level, but I think he's a guy that can help you there. I think he's a guy you can line up in the backfield. He's smaller than Lazard, but I think he's got a tenacity to him in the blocking game that I really, really like. And I mean, his 40 was, I think he ran like a 4.5 40. Like, it was not slow, but it also was not fast. If you watch him, and I watched him at Michigan State just because I got relatives who are Michigan State fans, and so I watched some of them every year. That, like, he can fly. He can fly in a level that, say, Amari Rodgers could not. So, I mean, I think early in the year, I don't know what he's going to bring. Because any of these rookies, I don't know what they're going to bring. But I think, if you're looking at it from the aspect of like, what can you do? He's a little undersized, but I think he can give you something. If you want to line him up, if you want to move him around the formation, you want to switch him between slot and the backfield and hunt your mismatches that way. What the Packers want to do with some of the two running back personnel last year, it didn't work. If you want to look at him at some of those packages and say, instead of A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, we're going to do Aaron Jones and Jaden Reed, and you move him backfield to slot and you hunt mismatches that way. Take a couple shots to him, every other week or something like that. Like, I think he's a guy who will give you in short area and then like some shot capability and some jet sweep stuff right away. I think will give you something, but you watch him and like, he plays with an attitude that I appreciate.
Yeah. And I was actually watching a video on him earlier from Michigan State and some of the tragedy he dealt with, growing up, losing his father when he was young. And how many people on this team have that similar story, with Jordan Love and Jaden Reed, and I think they said Tucker Kraft as well. It's like, these guys, man, we're built, the old Bill Belichick quote, we're building a team, we're not collecting talent, right? You can tell these guys are going to come in and they're going to fight for each other. But what you were talking about with the 40 time and why he dropped, Zach Cruz and Paul Brettel on Twitter both reported that John Eric Sullivan said the Packers actually clocked Reed at 4.37. So just shows you how quick, and you see it on tape, Dusty. You see it, man.
Oh, dude, when he gets out, he can fly, dude.
Yeah, and he's so quick twitch and just smooth, fluid. When I watch him run routes, and I don't mean to be dramatic here or overstate it, but there's only one other receiver that I seen in the time that I was a Packer fan that played on the Packers that he looks just as smooth or smoother than, that I feel like was the best route runner I ever seen, even better than Jordy Nelson, and that was Greg Jennings.
I was hoping you were going to say Greg Jennings. Dude was smooth.
Because he's just, there's no wasted motion, the hips, then everything about him is just, and when I see him run these routes, and granted it's in shorts and no pads, and I get all that, but man, he just looks so smooth. It reminds me of Greg Jennings, and you can see on tape he's a lot quicker than Greg Jennings. So that's exciting.
No, I'm very excited about him for sure.
Yeah. And the last question I'll ask you, and we'll let you get out of here, man. I know you've been running ragged all day, and I appreciate your time.
All the time in the world, brother.
Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, man. When they were first drafted, what I was hearing was think of Luke Musgrave as filling that Tunyon role, and think of Tucker Kraft filling that Mercedes Lewis role. And I actually asked Mike Wall about it yesterday. And it's funny, I asked him similar questions that I asked you. He was very excited about Jaden Reed. And when I asked about Lucas Van Ness, he was not as excited. Now, granted, he's an offensive lineman, so he's good. But
if he doesn't like a guy, isn't that like high praise? Like, I don't want to go against that guy type of thing.
I'm not giving that guy any credit. He's the enemy. But when I talked about Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, he got really excited about Luke Musgrave. How do you see those guys? Granted, I know it's early. That tight end, man, that position, we've heard Matt LaFleur talk about it, Mike hit on it too. It's going to take a lot of time for those guys to get adjusted and understand. You got to know everything about the passing game, everything about the running game. You got to be a receiver too, because they're going to play a lot of flex. You see Mercedes coming out, playing the boundary there before he motioned into the Y attach. What do you think about Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave? What pops off as far as how they might be deployed in this offense?
Yeah, you also have to learn a backfield stuff as well to act as a fullback, because they'll move those guys back there a little bit as well. Like it's tricky. Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough talking about tight ends. I like to talk about them, and assuming this is like when they get up to speed, like when they reach who it looks like they're going to be. Because like you said, I think year one's going to be rough. I think year one they're going to be more receivers than they are kind of blockers. Because even Kraft, who I think is an absolute dog, like there's some technique stuff he's got to clean up. I mean, he is very good, but he's not going to be transition and be a lockdown blocker right away. But yeah, I mean, I think that roughly tracks. I think Musgrave, we already talked to him a little bit. Like he's a guy who I don't think is ever going to be like a lockdown blocker, but he's willing and he'll get in your way, and he's a big dude. So yeah, Tunyon works for that. And Tunyon's a guy who worked really, really hard at his blocking. Like he got noticeably better as every year went on, and he was never perfect. He was never even above average, I don't think. But he knew he was supposed to be, and he was willing, and he got in people's way, and sometimes that's all you want. So I think that's Musgrave. And then, yeah, I mean, calling someone, I don't think he's ever going to be Mercedes Lewis, because Mercedes Lewis is like one of one in terms
of exactly what Mike said. Mike said
really?
Mercedes Lewis is one of a kind. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, he's a 6 offensive lineman. Like everyone says that, but it's absolutely just 6 offensive linemen that will catch 5 balls a year is basically what Lewis is at this point.
God, I was wanting him back so bad, man. And
that's if they get him back for the coach. I'd love if they were able to get back as a coach. It'd be incredible, because that was something Tunyon talked about. Tunyon, his first big year, I think, came with Lewis and Jimmy Graham there, and he was like to have Jimmy Graham, who obviously was a diminished version of himself, but basically to have like 2 guys that could pick their brain. One guy who's a lockdown blocker and has done it so well his entire career, and another guy who's basically a big wide receiver for the bulk of his career, to learn both those sides of the game from those 2 guys. He's like, that was huge in my development. So I would, if they could get Lewis back for that development, it would be amazing. Yeah, I got off a little bit there. Kraft, I mean, if you watch that dude, you watch that guy catch a pass and turn. I don't know why anyone would ever want to tackle him. Like he is such a you look at him like walking down the street in shorts. Like you got the pictures out of Packers camp. He looks like a big dude. You see that guy in pads, he looks like a monster, just an absolute menace. So he's a guy, if he hits his ceiling, if he does what I hope he's going to be, I mean, he's a guy who can block guys on the move. And you talk about, I don't know, like Ross Uglum and Jacob Morley, who cover NDSU. He's like, that was the guy in that conference. If you're playing up against South Dakota, you're game planning against Tucker Kraft. They didn't have anyone else in the team that would strike fear to you. Tucker Kraft was that dude. And then you watch him and go, yeah, I get it, because he can block. He's doing that slice motion underneath, and he's sealing off that backside. He's doing power movement stuff in the run game. And then he's got a pretty good, not as good as Luke Musgrave, but a pretty good feel in the passing game in terms of like when to run away from zone and using leverage and all that stuff. Good hands. And then once he gets the ball in his hands, like Musgrave is not like a big yak guy, but he can run away from you a little bit. Tucker Kraft will turn, and then he'll just, whoever's there, he will try to run you over. And that's different in the conference he's in than it is in the NFL. But you look at him and go, why would you want to tackle that dude? Like he looks like just an absolute menace. So yeah, I think if they both hit their ceilings, Tunyon is that guy who's going to be in line occasionally. He's going to do that and will be fine, but not great. I think Kraft has pretty good upside as a pass receiver as well. He's not going to be a big I think it's a whole seam stretcher thing. Like I think there's you want a guy who can do that stuff, but that's less important than all the other tight end stuff. Like you're not running that tight end up the seam 50 times a game. Like you want a guy who's a solid tight end, who's going to operate in a Jason Witten type thing. This is my ideal anyway. Jason Witten type deal, and you're working that short area, and you know how to work against leverage, like kind of in that 5 to 12 yard range. And then occasionally, if you need to get over the top, you got the giddy up to do that. And I think Kraft has all of that. So I think if both these guys hit their ceilings, to me, I think Kraft is the dude who's like George Kittle type game changer. The defense cannot key in on what you're doing defensively, because you can do anything and do anything at a very high level if he's in there. Whereas Musgrave, I think, could be very, very good, but more of a, he's going to be a very good receiver, and you can't key in on everything because he is a willing blocker, but you can't lock down the run game as well as you can if Kraft is out there. But it's 2 guys that, I was big on Michael Mayer, who I think is more kind of a solid guy from the jump. I think is going to, what you're going to get with him. but I think both these guys have much higher ceilings than Mayer does. Tucker Kraft, I was kind of so on, and then I watched some of his college clips and like, this guy looks like a monster. I'm glad he's on my team.
Heck yeah, and it's so true because like with Michael Mayer, to me that was a prospect that you felt like he could be ready day one, more ready than anyone else as far as the tight end class. But when you look at, like you said, Tucker and even Luke and how, man, they could legitimately be superstars. We might be looking at the old school Patriots with Gronk and that other guy, and I say that other guy for a reason. But I mean, you could if you come out and you show that 12 personnel and then you flex him, you flex Musgrave in the slot. I mean, Dusty, he was clocked at 20 miles an hour at the Senior Bowl, bro. That is move. There are guys that run 4.4 and 4.3 40s that haven't hit that speed as far as next gen stats with pads on.
Yeah, and he's a big dude moving that fast. That's a scary proposition, dude.
It's the thing that Greg Cosell talks about all the time is stride length. He said he watched film for NFL films for so many years. I think he started in the 70s. He said, I'd watch film for like 15, 20 years before I even realized stride length was a thing and how important it is. You have that, man. You have that with Luke Musgrave. You have it with Tucker Kraft too. But I can't wait to see those guys get on the field, man. Give me some 12 personnel, flex Luke out there in the slot and let him crack back on some guys and block. Come on, dude.
Well, and you also got then guys like we saw Watson, who is willing to block and is a good blocker. And then if you get a guy like Jaden Reed, or if Dobbs gets better in that, like if you have 4 or 5 guys who can block very, very well and are willing blockers as well, man, world's your oyster at that point.
Absolutely, man. I'm getting so excited for the season, but Dusty, we got to study first. We got to get this. I got so much I need to read.
I'm right there with it. I think this is the first year I did not buy any new books. I've got such a backlog. I'm just going back through old stuff as much as I can. I did buy like one of the Bobby Peters books from this year as well. So I can't remember which one he did this year, but I've got a book of his this year, and I've got another one coming, I think.
One aspect of my podcast that I've neglected is I was kind of the history guy, right? And telling some of the buried stories throughout the history of the Packers. And I haven't even did one this year because I'm still doing chalk talk. I'm doing chalk talk on rookies. I just want to understand as much as I can. And I've got, like you said, I've got 3 books I need to dive into. The wife bought me a book. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like they've got modern day pictures of spots in Green Bay and then what it was back in Curly Lambeau's time.
That sounds cool.
Excellent, man. Where you could see where they actually played, at the old, it's awesome, man. Absolutely awesome. That was probably my favorite stop this year when we went to Green Bay, and I'll let you get out of here. We actually had dinner at the Hotel Northland where the players used to stay. Bro, it went from this real fancy hotel where the players lived. Curly actually lived there for a short time. And then it actually got kind of ran down. It was turned into Section 8 housing. And then another group came in and bought it up after the building got abandoned. And when they built it back up, they're restoring it back to the Hotel Northland and just sitting in there, man. It had the area we sat in was close to the bar, and it was real fancy dining, but the vibe I got in that old building, Dusty, and my wife said the same thing. She went to the restroom, came back. She said, this place feels kind of like there's something here. And I know you like horror films, right? And we ain't going to get on this, but immediately I said, you know what I think of with that bartender handing me my old fashioned? I thought of The Shining immediately. I'm like, this has The Shining vibe right here, man. So I refuse to go in the bathroom, right? That's just anyway. We're gonna let you get out of here, man. Again, appreciate your time, dude. You guys follow him. You already are. If you're following this knucklehead called Clayton Bailey, then you're following Dusty Evely on Twitter. It's at Dusty Evely. Check out his work at Cheesehead TV, Packer Report, Pack a Day Podcast. Dusty, you're the man, dude. I really appreciate your time, bro.
Appreciate you, Clayton. This was a blast, dude.
All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thanks to Nate and the gang in the chat, everybody on Twitter and YouTube. And like I said, we'll get this out to you guys on Sunday afternoon. Really appreciate Dusty's time. Appreciate all you hanging out with us. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world, and go Pack go.
For Jordan Love.
37. Here he is throwing in the middle. It's caught by Watson. He's got great speed. Turning the corner. Christian Watson down the sideline. And he will score. Whoa! Hang on. Love to Watson. To a one-score game.
This one is the stunner. You basically feel like, all right, this Eagles team sort of has this thing under control, and then Christian Watson hits the Jets again. 6 touchdowns now in the last 3 games. He is really something. When he gets in the open field and running, That was some throw by